Okay, good vach and welcome to Daf Yomi, Maseches Rosh Hashana, Daf Chavtet, number 20. No, not Daf Chavtet, Daf Chavches, 28.
I think we stopped on Chaf Zion.
Zion and Beis, we stopped on the bottom. There are two dots.
Why don't we have a line here? Okay.
We had a special Shabbos this Shabbos, and then it was capped off tonight by a memorial for my grandmother. Passed away a couple of years ago. I wasn't here to be part of the remembrance for her. I made a siyum. Oh, I was getting a call. All right, I'm gonna have to start anyway. My father, there's a plumber's coming to the house, fix a toilet that's broken. All right. Anyway, I'm gonna start. Anyway, it was a nice memorial for my grandmother. I got up, I made the siyum, Masechah Sukkah. I haven't made a siyum on a couple of Masechtas now. And of course, I had some candid humor, as always. How was my speech, Dad, tonight? It was a good speech?
It was fantastic.
It was
so
a fantastic
beautifully
speech
about your grandmother, and she loves you so much, and you really captured her essence.
I spoke about her. I just said my grandmother is a lot like, she was a fun person to be around, even though she didn't speak much. She didn't do much, but when you were around her, you felt good. You felt better. You felt you wanted to be around her. I can't say that most people feel that about most people. Most people find very few people they'd like to be around, but she was one of those people, a special chen, a special people just affinity towards her. And it was very nice, and I got to meet my brother today. My brother came over, my long lost brother. I have a brother. He lives 3 blocks away from my parents, and came over Shabbos afternoon. Usually I take a nap on Shabbos afternoon, but for him, I stayed up, and we had some wagering, some bets, some playing basketball. Of course, he lost all the bets. I won all the bets, and right then.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Anyway, it was nice to see him. We'll get started here on the bottom of Zayin with Beis. The 2 dots, about 6 lines from the bottom. We're only talking about, Mishnah says, if you blow into a pit or a cistern, you're yotze if you hear it before it goes. But the echo, once you hear the echo, you're not yotze. Rav Huna says, we only said that if people hear the echo, they're not yotze if they're standing on top of the pit. If they're actually standing in the hole, yotzu, they are yotze because what they hear is not an echo. They hear is a direct sound. Bryce says yotze. If atnav, the Mishnah says lo yotze. The answer to resolve this difficulty must be that one's talking about people that were in the bore, and one's talking about people that weren't in the bore. Other ways, other people have a different way of asking this question. Mishnah says you blow into the tochel tochadus lo yotze. You're not yotze. Atanya yotze. Bryce says you are yotze. Amar Rav Huna, to this Rav Huna answer, lo kasha. Difference is whether you're in the bore or whether you're on top of the bore. Amar Rabba, Shama mixa skia babor, mixa skia al svasa bor yotze. If you hear part of the tkia in the bore and then part of it al svasa bor, so the one you heard in the bore, you're yotze. The one you hear al svasa bor, you're not going to be yotze, because you heard the echo. So half of it you're yotze, half of the tkiya was kosher, and half of it wasn't kosher. You're yotze because theoretically you heard a half of tkiya, and that was long enough for the shir of a tkiya. Mixes tkiya kodem shial amud hashachar, mixes tkiya la'achar shemud hashachar. Imagine someone blew the shofar right before amud hashachar started. You can only use some yotze the mitzvah of shofar once amud hashachar hits, and half of it and the blowing of the shofar extended into the first rays of dawn. When Amud HaShachar did hit, lo yotze. The halacha is, Rabbah says, you're not yotze. What's the difference in the 2 cases? Hasam debayina tula tkiya b'chiyuv. So, right, seemingly both cases you heard half a tkiya that was possible and half a tkiya that was kosher. So why either you're both yotze in both cases, or you're not yotze in either case? So the Gemara answers, "Hasan ba'ina kula tkiya b'chiyuva v'leika hachanami ba'ina kula." So the Gemara tries to answer, "Hasan ba'ina kula tkiya b'chiyuva v'leika." There you need to hear the whole tkiya, and by the dawn you heard part of it before dawn. Hachanami ba'ina kula tkiya b'chiyuva v'leika. So the Gemara retorts. The Gemara says the first case also, when you heard an echo, half of it was an echo. You also wasn't. It was half the tkiya was possible. When it comes to the blowing at dawn, so there it's not Lila. The nighttime is not a time where anyone could be yotze. The bor, even though you heard the echo, technically, if you were in the bor, theoretically, those people in the bor could be yotze with that. For them, it's not an echo. So therefore, even though for you it's possible for other people to be kosher, so therefore half a tkiya would be okay. The Memra the Savar Rabba Shama Sof Tkiya below Tkiya Tkiya Yatza. So we're concluding what? That if you hear half a Tkiya, the last half of the Tkiya, you're Yotze. Mela, and we would induce from this, Tkiya Tkiya below Sof Tkiya, deduce from this. What's just an induce and deduce?
Deduce is what you take out of it.
Right.
Induce is what you cause.
Right. So we'll deduce from this. Mela Tkiya Tkiya below Sof Tkiya Yatza. And we can infer from this that if you heard the first half of the tkiya and you missed the second part of the tkiya, you're yotze. Tashma. Is this really true? Bryce, not like a takab rishona. You heard the first blast of tkiya, right? There's 9 blasts. Tkiya shua tkiya, tkiya shua tkiya, tkiya shua tkiya. Masha b'shniya kishtayim. And then the second tkiya, which comes after the trua, you blew it the length of 2 tkiyos to be yotze, the last tkiya of the first set. And the first tkiya of the middle set. Ein biyado ala achas. Halacha is you're only yotze the tkiya, the last key of the first set. If it's a long enough sound, you should be yotze both kiyos with it. We don't separate. We can't imaginarily separate one long kiyah into half. Tashma hadokel tocha bro tocha dusel tocha pitas im kol shofar yatsa im kol havara shama lo yatsa. This is the Mishnah. Like we said before, the echo you're not yotze. My lepuk betchilas tkiya. If you're yotze with half of the tkiya, so why can't you be yotze with the half of the tkiya before the sound goes into the bor and it becomes mixed with the echo? The first part you should be yotze with. The Gemara goes back now and says that half a tkiya, if the tkiya is long enough for 2 tkiyas and you only heard half of it, the Gemara, this is how we pass on halacha, that you're not yotze, because then what's the case? The case where Rabbi was talking about, where he says Shama mixes tkiya bar mixes tkiya al svasa bar yatza, that's talking about when the person himself was blowing, he blew the shofar in the bor, and then while he was going up, he blew al svasa bar. So he heard the entire thing himself. He didn't hear an echo at any part of it. So the Gemara says Ihaki Ma'ala Memra was the chiddush. Of course he yosim. How the same as in the Mapik Reisha Akasi Shofar Bor. You might think, well, he goes there, they shouldn't be yotze. Because he might, when he takes his head out of the pit, when he's going on, when he's ascending from the bor, maybe the shofar will be partially in the pit, and it'll be an echo, become ariv kala, and there will be a mixture of noises between the actual shofar and the echo. Kamashma, I'm not worried about that. Amar Rav Yehuda b'shofar shall ola lo yitaka. If the shofar belonged to an animal that was an ola, you took it off the head of a korban ola. You can't blow with that. But the ever you are yotze. But shofar shall shlamim. Took the shofar from an animal as a shlamim, korban shlamim lo yitaka. Also, you shouldn't do that. Lo yotze. Even but the ever you're not yotze. My time. What's the reason? Ola bas meilihi. And ola has a korban. It's kodesh kodshim. Kodesh kodshim, which is the holiest type of korban, is subject to the laws of meila. Meila, if you derive benefit from a korban like that, so therefore you have to pay a penalty of 1/5, plus you have to pay whatever hana you got from that. But the idea is that it's yotze lechulin. It goes, becomes deconsecrated, and you can use it. Kevan the malba nafkala lechulin. Once your moel, you blew the shofar, it went to chulin, and you could use it. Shlamim labne meilan, and shlamim is kachim, but it's not kachim. It's kachim kalim, not kachim. It's not. There's no meila by that. Isura hu derachah who is an isser to benefit from kachim. But there's no me'ila, so therefore it doesn't go lechulin. So therefore, when you're blowing an isser, and therefore it's the mitzvah of avera. When you do it on mitzvah, when you're doing an avera, so you're not yotzi the mitzvah. Maskila Rava asked the following question: Emas mal. When did you commit me'ila? Basar the taka. Only after you blew the shofar, and then you were committed me'ila. Kika taka b'isura taka. When he blew the shofar, he was still doing an isser, so it's also mitzvah of avera, also by the ola. First Rava says in both cases the ola and the shlam are not yotze because the mitzvah of avera. Hada amar echad yotze. Then you retracted that. He said both cases b'diavad you're yotze. Mitzvahs lav the hanos nit. This is the psak halacha that mitzvahs, the blowing of a shofar, is a mitzvah. Blowing the shofar is a mitzvah, and it's not lav the hanos nit. No mitzvahs. There's no physical benefit from a sound. A sound doesn't provide you with a physical benefit. So the only hana that you're getting is the mitzvah, that you're doing a mitzvah. And mitzvahs lav lahanos nitnu, so therefore you're not benefiting from something illegally because you're just accomplishing a mitzvah, and therefore there's no isser, so therefore you're yotze. It's not a mitzvah of avera. Amar Rav Yehuda b'shofar shel avodah zara lo yitaka. You shouldn't blow a shofar shel avodah zara. Imtaka yatsa, again, if you're tokeh with avodah zara to asr bahano. You're not supposed to use it. You're not supposed to handle it. So even handling it would be an Isser Hana. But the evidence you're tokeh for the mitzvah, you're yotze, because again, mitzvah is lav lahanos is the shofar shal yerni dachas lo yitaka v'imtaka lo yotze. If it was shal yerni dachas, which is a city that is supposed to be burned down to the ground because rov of it is ovdei avodah zara, if you had a shofar from that city, that you're not even yotze b'diavad. Why time? Yerni dachas kute michta shiure. There, everything is destined to be burned. If it's ultimately destined to be burned, so therefore it's already considered halakha that gets burned, and therefore you don't have the shear of a shofar, which is a tefach. Someone takes a neder, and he says, I'm not getting hana from his friend. So that friend could blow him the mitzvah of shofar, because again, mitzvah is lav lahanos nitnu. Amar Rava, Hamudar Hana Michavero Mazela Mecha. Let's close the door. Hamudar Hana Michavero. Hamudar Hana Michavero Mutalit Kol Al Kiyah Shamisa. Hamudar Hana Michavero Shofar Mutalit Kol Al Kiyah Shamisa. If you took a neder, you're not going to get enough from a shofar. You can still use it to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashana because mitzvahs lav lahanos. Amar Hamudar Hana Michavero. Mazel of mechatas me'aksham avalo mimos hachama. Someone, I take a neder, I'm not going to get enough from somebody, so he could sprinkle on me mechatas, which is to purify someone from tumas and mace, only during the winter months, where it's not a benefit. It's cold already, so to get water sprinkled on you is not a benefit. When it's hot outside, mos hachama during the summer, and you benefit, it cools you off, then you're not allowed to because you're getting a physical hana. There's a mitzvah, it's also physical hana, and you can't get enough from that person. Hamudar hana mimaya. Let's say you take a neder, you're not going to get hana from a spring. Tovo bo tvila shal mitzvah. You can do it tvila shal mitzvah most like a shaman when you're not getting a physical benefit because it's cold. Aval lo b'mosacham. But the summer, where you're getting a physical benefit, it cools you off. So you can't do that because not only you're getting a mitzvah benefit, the tvila shal mitzvah, but also you're getting a physical benefit. Shachal avur de shmuel. They sent to Abu Shmuel the following halacha: Kafo va'achal matzah yatza. If someone forced someone to eat matzah, he's yotze the mitzvah of matzah. Kafo mans. The Gemara says, who forced him? Ilema kafo shade, meaning a demon forced him, meaning he became crazy. A Rosh just went into him. Atanya, eat him. The Brisa says, eat him chalim, eat him shota. Brisa says, if a person is sometimes is lucid in his mind, and sometimes he's a shota, he acts like crazy person. When he's lucid in his mind, he's like a bikeya, he's like a smart person, and he can do mitzvahs. He's like a shota, and a shota can't do mitzvahs. His mitzvah's not a mitzvah, he's like a katan. It's not talking about Koshé, it's talking about that Persians, the enemies of the Jews at the time, were Persian people. They persecuted them. So they persecuted them, they said, you have to eat matzah, and they forced the matzah down his throat, he'd be yotze. Rava says we can deduce from this, if you blow a shofar and you want to blow a nice tune to a melody, you're blowing the tekiyos on Rosh Hashana to a melody, you're yotze. Where it says pshita, it's the same thing. Hanuhach, the same thing. Ma'ad the same hasam echol matzah merachmana b'ha'achol. There by matzah, it said to eat the matzah, and he ended up eating it. Aval hacha zichron trua ksiv, but by shofar it says zichron trua. It's not just enough to eat it; it has to be a zikaron ksiv. This guy is just playing around. He's making songs. Kamash malan. That no, even over here by the mitzvah of shofar, it's not considered to be misasek. Misasek means you have no control over what you're doing. You're doing something completely inadvertently. As long as you, Rav is saying the cloud that we're going to see in mitzvahs lo srichas kavan. You don't have to kavan for the mitzvah. That's why they force you to eat matzah or yotze. But you have to have realization that you're doing it. And Gemara thought that you're playing zichron shua indicated that someone who plays lashir is not realizing that he's doing the mitzvah because he's not having the proper kavana. Right? And the Gemara says you don't need such kavana. Just if you know, even if you're playing it to a melody, playing the shua to a melody and the tekiah to a melody, it's considered to be you realize you're doing the mitzvah. Alma kasav. So Gemara says alma kasav rather mitzvahs aim srichas kavana. Mitzvahs don't need to have intent to fulfill the mitzvah. Esive, we see that's not true. Braysa yakore but Torah v'giz mana mikra. You're reading the Torah and time comes. You're reading the Torah and the actual Torah scroll, and the time comes to say Kriyat Shema. Im kiven, you're up to Kriyat Shema in the Torah. Im kiven libo yotza. If you had in mind to be yotze in the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema yotze, im lav lo yotze. If you didn't have in mind, you're not yotze. My love kiven libo latze. What does it mean? The Gemara thinks it means that kavanah to be yotze the mitzvah. Lo likros. The Gemara says no. It just means a kavanah to realize that he's reading from the Torah. The Gemara says likros hakakari. It says that he's reading. What do you need kavanah to read? He is reading. The Gemara says bekora lagia. We're talking about a case where he was looking over the Torah to edit it to make sure there are no mistakes, to gloss over the Torah to make sure there are no mistakes, and therefore he wasn't really reading it. He was just mumbling the words. So you have to actually have kavanah to actually really say the words. But he doesn't have to have kavanah to be yotzi the mitzvah. Tashma, haya over achari beis haknesses. He was passing by the back of a shul. Shahaya beis samach beis haknesses. His house was in earshot of the shul. Mashama kol shofar, or kol megillah. He heard the sound of a shofar, or the sound of a megillah on Purim. Im kivin libo yatsa. If he had kavanah, he's yotze. Im lav lo yatsa, my lav im kivin libo latsa. It doesn't mean he had kavanah to be yotze the mitzvah. Lo lishmoa. It means he had kavanah to just hear. Lishmoa of hashama. Of course he's hearing, and it says he heard. So what's the chiddush? Kiyavana to hear. The Gemara says savar chamer ba'almahu. If he thinks that it's merely a donkey barking, so then he doesn't realize he's doing the mitzvah. So he has to have kavanah lishmoa that he realizes that people are reading the Megillah or blowing the shofar, not a donkey barking or braying, I guess you'd say. By mitzvah of shofar and all mitzvahs, you have to have kavanah for the person who's blowing the shofar and the person who hears the shofar. So niskaven shomeya. The Shomeya had kavanah, who heard the Megillah, and the Mashmiya, the person who's blowing, didn't have kavanah. Mashmiya lo niskaven Shomeya. Alternatively, if you had the opposite, where the Shomeya didn't have kavanah, lo yotze, not yotze. Actually, it's kaven Shomeya, Mashmiya, both of them have kavanah. Bishlam is kaven Mashmiya, lo niskaven Shomeya, where the Mashmiya, the person blowing the shofar, had kavanah, or the person being Shomeya, hearing the shofar, didn't have kavanah. Kasavar chamra ba'almahu. According to what we're saying, mitzvah lo tzrichas kavanah, so you have to say it means that he didn't have kavanah. The Shomeya means he thought it was a donkey braying. Ella, it's common shomeya, and it's common mashmiya, where the blowing the shofar didn't have kavanah. Right? If you'll say that mitzvah lav don't lo shrichas kavanah, so what is he lacking over here? He knows that he's blowing a shofar. What else? What's going on over here? So the Gemara says, lav dokei l'shir, lav dokei l'shir. Are we talking about that he's blowing l'shir? And that would be, he knows that he's blowing the shofar. And the Gemara says, no, maybe he really just, instead of playing a shir melody, at least you realize when you're playing, you're blowing a shofar. But if you're just barking into the shofar, and you just want to make weird sounds, so that's the Mishnah is telling you that if you're not miscommon to do that, if you're not miscommon to do l'shir, just intend to bark, then that wouldn't be kavanah to be motzi somebody. According to you, Rav, it's just shrichas kavana. Let's say you sleep on the 8th day of Sukkot, meaning the day after Sukkot ends, Shmini Atzeres. you should get malchus, right? Because mitzvahs lo strichas kavana. So therefore, you're sleeping in there. You're not on kavana to be able to say the mitzvah, but you're over on Baal Tosef because it's like not having kavana is like you had kavana for the mitzvah, and therefore you're doing a mitzvah Baal Tosef. You're violating the mitzvah of sleeping in a sukkah when it's not sukkahs. You're adding on to the Torah. The Torah says 7 days. You're sleeping in there 8 days. Amar lo Shani Omer. He says, I say, mitzvahs eno over alein ela bizmanan. He says you can only be over Baal Tosef when it's the zman of the mitzvah. The 8th day is not the zman of the mitzvah, so therefore you can't be over. Mesiv Rav Shalom Bar Abba, is this really true? He's going up to Duchen to give the priestly blessing. Shlo Yomar Hoven instantly Rishus Levarach is Israel. I have the Rishus, I have the permission to give Birchas Kohanim, Osif Bracha Achas Mishli. I'll add another bracha besides the 3 brachas. Go Hashem Elokei Avoseichem Yosef Aleichem, to say an extra pasuk. Talmud Lomar Lo Sosifu Al Davar. So you see that you're not allowed to do that. But this case came when the Baruch Lay, once he already did the first 3 blessings, Avrale's money, the time is over. Because the Avar, you see that you're over on Baltos, even though the mitzvah is over. The Gemara says, Hacha Mayaskinas, I must say, so the Gemara said, Below Sayim. We're talking about where you didn't finish saying the 3 brachas. It was still the time. Tanya Siyim, but the Brayso says he did finish. Siyim bracha achas. So the Gemara says maybe it really is talking about where you only finished 1 bracha and it's still the time of the mitzvah. The Gemara says about Tanya Siyim kol brachosov. But the other Brayso says he finished all his brachas. So the Gemara answers at the end, Shani Hacha, Kevan Limizrami Le Sibur Achrina Hadar Mevarech Kule Yoma Zmanehu. Since if another group of 10 men, they wanted to come have a minyan, the Kohen technically can give them brachas also. So therefore, it's always considered that day, it's considered the time, it's always considered the time of the mitzvah, and therefore you'd be over on Baal Tosef. It's always the mitzvah as opposed to the 8th day of Sukkot. So the Zumanat Temra, how do you know this is true? It's not on Nisan of Matana Achas, Nizar of Matana Achas. There's 2 types of karbonos. There's karbonos that have when you throw the blood on the mizbeach, you only throw 1 time, like a bechor or ma'aser korban pesach, just 1 throwing of the blood. And then there's other karbonos like a shlomim, ola. It's shnayim sheina arba. You throw twice, but it's really 4 times. You throw on the corners, therefore it's like you threw 4 times on the mizbeach. So let's say the blood of a shlomim gets mixed with the blood of a bechor. Let's say. So if the blood of a bechor gets mixed with the blood of a bechor, like our bechor got mixed with a ma'aser, right? Matan dal, inasu matan achas, then you got mixed together. So obviously you know, whatever this blood is, it only has 1 matana, so you have no problem. Matan dal, if the shlom got mixed with an ola, inasu matan dal, just sprinkle it 4 times. Matan dal and matan achas, but let's say you have a bechor got mixed with a shlomim. So what do you do? Lezer Omer Yinasnu v'matan dal. He says you should sprinkle 4 times. Rabbi Yeshua Omer Yinasnu matan achas. Shua says no, only 1 time. Omer Rabbi Lezer. This is Rabbi Yeshua. Areyu over al Baal Tigra. If you only do it once, you're over possibly on Baal Tigra. You shouldn't do less than the Torah says. Omer Rabbi Yeshua. Areyu over Baal Tosef. But according to you, there's a problem that you technically the blood might be blood of only 1 time, and you're putting on 4 times. You're over Baal Tosef. You're adding on to the Torah. Amarle Rebbe Lezer, lo no more Baal Tosef elak shu ba'atzma. Baal Tosef is only applicable when it's not a mixture, when it's no suffix. Amarle Rebbe Yeshua, lo no more Baal Tigra elak shu ba'atzma. I'll use the same answer for you that since the blood is mixed together, so there's no Baal Tigra over here. Though Amar Rabbi Yeshua had another point against Rebbe Lezer. If you only put 1 sprinkling, so you weren't over about you were over about Tigra. So I'm sorry. Oh, I'm doing some plumbing work in there. It's kind of distracting. When you only do 1 sprinkling of about Tigra. Maybe you did less than the Torah said, but you didn't do anything. You restrained from doing something. If you did the wrong thing by putting 4 and you're about Tosef, normally we know in the Torah it's better shave al tasa. It's better when you're in doubt, better sit and don't do anything. The haka came in the oiv le matana mibchor Avrele Lizmani. In this case, or Lezer Yeshua, once you do first sprinkling, so the time is over. Ketani the Avar Mishum Bal Tosef. And it says, according to Rabbi Yeshua, that you're over on Bal Tosef by sprinkling more blood. La Mishum Damrina, Kevan Dilim Esramile Bukhra Achrina, Hadar Mazemine Kula Yomas Manihu. So the Gemara says, no, it's the same idea, just like we answered over there by Berkas Kohanim, we'll answer over here that it's always time to bring Korban Achor. If there was another Korban Achor that came, we would also sprinkle again. So therefore, it's considered Bal Tosef because it's always a time for Bechor. So they're sprinkling 4 times would be Bal Tosef. So the Gemara says, how do you know that's true? Dilma Kasav. The reason over here, Rabbi Yeshua mitzvah is over Alei and Afila Shel Bizman. Maybe Rabbi Yeshua holds. Not like the answer Rava said before, that really you could be over a mitzvah's Bal Tosef, even Shelo Bizmana, not like the way Rava answered before. So the Gemara says, this is what we're saying. Rosham Barabba, my time Mashavik Masnisin. Why do you leave the Mishnah of the Matanos of blood? Mostly Brisa, and he brought from the Brisa, which talks about Berkas Kohanim. Losiv Masnisin. He should have asked from the Mishnah. Masnisin my time alone Mosiv. Why didn't he ask from the Mishnah? Came with the Ilum Esramale Bukhrachmina, boy Mazamine, Kula Yoma Chazevanihu. You see, obviously, because it's very apparent in that case that if another Bechor comes around, it's the time to sprinkle a Bechor. So it's always the time to sprinkle the blood of Bechor. Brisa Nam became on the Misram Yisibura Achrina, Hadam Barak, Kula Yoma Zmane. Similarly, over here, in the case of the Berkas Kohanim, it's the same idea. What are you trying to prove from that? It's really the same idea over there. That since another seaboard 10 men would come, it'd also be called the Zman for it. Rashan Barabba, so what was Rashan Barabba asking? Rashan Barabba, Hasam lo Sagi lo Yav. Hacha Iboy Mevarach, Iboy Mevarach. The reason Rashan Barabba decided to ask from the Brisa and not from the Mishnah is because if another Bechor comes, you have to sprinkle the blood. But if another Sibor comes, that Kohen doesn't have to give blood. It's a Rashus if he wants to do Berkas Kohanim or not. That's why he preferred to ask from the Brisa and not from the Mishnah. Rava Amar, so now Rava tries to get it a different way. Latse is lo boi kavana, right? Biyotzi mitzvah, you don't need kavana. La'avor boi kavana. The reason you're not, the original question of Abaye, that someone who sleeps in a sukkah on the 8th day should get malchus for Baal Tosef, to be over on Baal Tosef, to be over on Aveira, that needs kavana. Where I asked on this, Hamat and Damim, the Rabbi Yeshua, the la'avor v'lo boi kavana. For the case of Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Lezer was talking about Matan Damim of Karbanos, that was talking about Aveira Baal Tosef. And you see, you didn't need Kavana to be Yotze. Right? He's not having Kavana to be over Baal Tosef. Elamor Rava, Latzis Loboy Kavana. To be Yotze mitzvah, you don't need Kavana. Like Rava said, Lavor Bizmano Loboy Kavana. If it's to be over Baal Tosef in the Zman, you don't need Kavana. And that was talking about the case of the Karbanos, was in the Zman. Because the time of Bechor could be the whole day. Shalob Bizmano, Boy Kavana. When Shalob Bizmano, like the 8th day after Sukkot is over already, Shalob Bizmano, it's not the time of Sukkot anymore, then you need Kavanah. And that's why we know that if you sleep in the 8th day in a Sukkah, you're not going to get Malchus, because you need Kavanah to be over in Baal Tosef when it's not the Zman of the Mitzvah. I'm sure you all missed having my father partake of this, but you have to see him tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow. See you tomorrow.